Hello, I'm Clint Walker, and this is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. And today we're going to talk about how appraisers are handling buyer's agent compensation concessions after the NAR settlement. I am 100% sure that you're all familiar with the NAR settlement because it doesn't seem like we've talked about anything else for the last 6 months in the real estate world, with the exception to maybe complaining about interest rates and hoping they go down. So I'm not gonna rehash what it did, but it's changed the way we do business in a really significant way. And earlier this year, I was invited to be at a GNAR event as an expert panelist at Nationomics, and it was a great opportunity and great experience being there. And I was there just to talk about how appraisers are going to do this. And at the time, I was speculating because that's all anybody could do. We had just gotten some direction from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and maybe the FHA at that point, but we didn't know how our MLS was going to change or what they were going to do. And so now we've seen the MLS changes have happened. We have some of the fields have changed in what we're entering in the MLS, and specifically the compensation field, as I understand it, has completely gone away. I think there's a field where we can say something about concessions after the fact, but it doesn't. It seems like out of concern for liability, the MLS is really trying to not get involved in the conversation or recording of agent compensation. So that's kind of like the worst case scenario for appraisers, because as I've said before, I guess I'm in the minority in the way that I feel about this, but the MLS is like a historical record for me and every other appraiser. It's a database where we go to do analysis to see our most important data point, which is what buyers are willing to pay for various things. And when data is recorded correctly into the MLS, we can do our jobs the best we possibly can. If you've been to any of my classes, and probably in some of my other videos, I practically beg agents to be conscientious and accurate when you're putting information in the MLS, because it helps us all. It helps our entire industry just to do it accurately and, with regard for your colleagues and even, those grouchy old appraisers coming along behind you. We need that data. So as I understand it, we've lost some of the data on agent compensation, and for that reason, you as agents will probably be getting more phone calls from appraisers trying to verify that information, and which is the ideal for us. There's a lot of stuff in the MLS that, we're required to verify literally everything. What agents include in the MLS can be considered one of our sources of verification. So for a lot of things, we don't have to make literal phone calls to ask questions about. But when it's probable that something has happened and it's not recorded in the MLS, then we got to start making phone calls. So please, if you start getting those calls, I think I saw one of our brokers ask our agents to put those appraisers' numbers in your save them in your phone, put them in your speed dial, so that when they call, you can see that name and it's not a spam call. That would be great. We all would appreciate our calls being answered in a timely fashion. As sort of a side note, a lot of our responsibility as appraisers and for verification is limited to what we can accomplish in the normal course of business. I'm not sure exactly what the definition of a normal course of business is, but most appraisers look at it as a normal business day, 8 to 5. If I make phone calls trying to verify all this information and I can't get called back or can't find what I need within that business day, then I just disclose that I couldn't verify it and I move on. And that's sort of the end of our responsibility or our perceived liability. I think that's probably all fine. I mean, somebody will have to get sued to figure out if it's not. So there's your little nugget, little appraiser secret right there. But anyway, back to the compensation. The chatter among most appraisers is, and this is sort of legitimized because it's basically the same thing that Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and the FHA have said, is that agent commissions are now and going forward will probably be considered customary expenses in the transaction, and they're not going to be adjusted for. And the adjustment thing, that's what everybody really wants to know when you're asking anything about how will something affect what appraisers do. We're talking about the adjustment to the comps. So, in theory, if we were adjusting for agent compensation, say we've got a $500,000 listing and the buyer's agent on one was paid $10,000 and on another was paid $0, we could make an adjustment up or down as appropriate for the $10,000. So, to the extent that agent commissions remain customary expenses, we're not going to be adjusting for them. That's pretty much the gist among everybody. So, to the extent that this information is no longer disclosed to us, we can't really track it, whether it's customary or not. That's sort of the interesting thing to me about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the FHA coming out even before I think they may have started making their statements back in April or May, saying that they consider agent fees customary expenses. That's sort of an interesting statement to me because you can't predetermine or mandate what's a customary expense. Customary expenses are taken straight out of the market. What makes it customary is everybody doing it. In certain counties, it's customary for the seller to pay certain title expenses or owner's title policies. In other counties, it may not be customary. All sorts of customary things. That's just the idea that everybody does it, and it will be done for you. So, that's sort of just the status quo. But that stuff is derived from the market. It's not a mandate. It's not a requirement. It's just somebody reporting on what is already happening. So the idea that agent compensation is customary by some sort of mandate from the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the FHA is, it's great. Like, it creates it's practical, and it creates efficiency in our industry, so that kind of relieves us from even having to question it or think about it. But it's not technically true. And I guess maybe one of the important things to think about there is that, especially from the appraiser side, we are trying to analyze buyer behaviors and buyer demand and what buyers are willing to pay for things. And so these things vary based on the market, and a market can be not just a location, but also, like buyer buying power. So in the lower price points where people might be shopping because they don't have a lot of cash, don't have a lot of buying power, in those markets, what choice do they have but to ask the seller to pay for their buyer's agent compensation if they're going to use one? And so in those types of markets where nobody has where there's simply no other option, certainly it's likely to remain customary. But in the luxury market, where people are coming in with loads of cash, maybe they've owned houses for a long time, or they're moving from more expensive markets to Nashville, as we've seen just an immense amount of, where they're more flush with cash, these buyers might be paying their own agent and not asking for it. And so it stops becoming customary because it doesn't need to be customary. So it's just something to think about. Maybe it's something to pay attention to if you're doing research, calling around on this stuff. I know I talked to some agents, and and they are trying to do their own research so they can advise their clients about what's happening, even though, especially since maybe we're not being, it's not being reported on the MLS anymore. But I want to just give you the information about how appraisers look at it. And I want you to take comfort in the fact that right now it is considered customary. The GSEs, which is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the FHA, they might eventually, because they're compiling all of our data constantly, they might eventually come out with some sort of report and data saying, hey, we've looked at 100,000 appraisal reports, and it seems like these fees are no longer customary. If that happens, we could be in for another shift. There could be other changes that have to happen as a result. But right now, everything should be smooth sailing for you. So I hope that's helpful. It's, in my experience in this new world, I've got a couple listings and buyer side representation right now, and I've had to operate under the new under the new rules after the NAR settlement, and it's not bad. I was pretty annoyed and angry and frustrated about it at the beginning, because it just didn't make sense. But in reality, even though I think that we ought to have the data available to us about who's paying what so we can advise our clients, it is really just a negotiation, and hopefully you've gotten good education and guidance from your broker on how to navigate that, because it's really not so bad. It's really basically the same conversation that we were all, at least here in Middle Tennessee, where we do everything better. It's basically the same thing we were doing before, just at a different point in the negotiation. So I hope that's helpful to you. And if I can be of service to you with a professional measurement or consultation or an appraisal, you can find me at appraiserpool.com. And hope you have a great rest of your week. And thank you so much for watching.